You are losing and you don't even know the game you're in. Not because you're weak, not because you're incapable, but because no one ever told you that this life is a board and you are not just a player on it. You are the king, and if the king falls, the game ends. But here's the tragedy. Most men today don't even know they're kings. They spend their days running, trying to be seen, trying to be heard, trying to win, but without any real sense of what they're protecting. They chase money, titles, bodies, women, respect, not realizing that all of it means nothing if you've lost the center. I have watched men break under pressure not because they were broken, but because they had no throne inside them, no internal structure, no inner sovereignty. They moved like pawns, fast, reactive, desperate for position. But they were never taught the truth. You are not a pawn. You are not a performer. You are not a spectator on the sidelines of your own existence. You are the one everything else revolves around. But you forgot. And forgetting who you are is the greatest danger of all. Because when a king forgets he is king, the kingdom collapses. He becomes a puppet of his wounds, a servant of the ego, a slave to the persona. Let me tell you something you've always felt but maybe never put into words. That deep sense of restlessness, of not being enough, of needing to prove something. It is not because you are lacking. It is because you've been taught to play a game that was never designed for your soul. You were handed a script, not a vision. You were trained to react, not to reign. You were told to win by moving fast. But a true king wins by knowing when not to move. I am not speaking to the mask you wear. I am not here for the role you've perfected. I am speaking to the part of you that has always known there's more. More than performance, more than hustle, more than being liked, followed, praised. I am speaking to the part of you that aches when you lie to yourself. The part that goes silent when you betray your own truth just to be accepted. The part that knows you were not born to be conquered by fear, but to command your life from within. This video is not a motivational speech. It is a wake-up call, a reminder, a mirror. You don't need to become anything. You need to remember what you are. And that remembering begins when you stop playing the wrong game. When you stop moving just to move. When you sit still, listen, and ask the most important question a man can ask. What am I really protecting? Because if the answer is your image, your job, your status, then you've already lost the game. But if the answer is your integrity, your peace, your purpose, then it's not too late to return to the throne. And this is where the real game begins, not on the outside, but within. Shall we continue? Most men do not lose their power in a single moment. They lose it slowly, quietly, in increments. Every time they say yes when they mean no. Every time they abandon their truth for approval. Every time they perform instead of protect. This is the silent collapse of the inner kingdom. Not a war, not a fire, but erosion. You were not taught to rule your world. You were trained to survive in someone else's. You learned how to perform strength, not embody it. How to conquer others, not how to lead yourself. You were rewarded for being obedient, not conscious. For being productive, not purposeful. You were praised for the armor you wore, not for the soul that lived beneath it. And so the collapse began. First came the persona, the mask you created to survive. You became what others needed you to be, the achiever, the pleaser, the strong one, the silent one. But every mask costs something, and behind that mask, the true self grew quieter. It whispered in moments of stillness, in sleepless nights, in brief flashes of rage or sorrow. But you silenced it, because you didn't have time to feel. You were too busy proving. Then came the shadow. The parts of you you couldn't accept. Your vulnerability, your fear, your softness, your longing, your confusion. You buried them, hoping to become more powerful. But in doing so, you became divided. And no kingdom can stand if its king is at war with himself. When you betray your inner world to succeed in the outer one, you might win applause. But inside, you bleed. And that bleeding turns into restlessness, into rage, into numbness, into shame. This is why you feel powerless, not because you are weak, but because you are disconnected from the throne within. A man who does not know who he is will serve anything that makes him feel strong. He'll serve money, he'll serve sex, he'll serve status, he'll even serve destruction, just to feel something again. But the cost is everything: peace, clarity, sovereignty. You are not meant to be ruled by the market, by society, by your past. You are meant to be ruled by your center, your essence, yourself. Carl Jung called this the process of individuation, the journey of returning to wholeness, where the shadow is not rejected but integrated, where the persona is not destroyed but unmasked, where the king is not an image but a presence. This is not mythology. This is psychology, depth psychology, and it does not promise comfort. It promises power, but only to the one who dares to reclaim it from within. And so I ask you, when did you last sit in silence? Not with your goals, but with your grief. Not with your plans, but with your pain. The lost psychology of kings is not about domination. It is about discernment. It is about knowing what is essential and refusing to sacrifice it, no matter the cost. This is how you rise again, not by conquering others, but by returning to the throne you abandoned inside yourself. Shall we go deeper? Every king has a throne, but not every king sits on it. Most men unknowingly abandon their inner throne, and in their absence, something else takes the seat. The unacknowledged pain, the repressed fear, the forgotten wound. This is the shadow, and when it is not faced, it becomes the silent ruler of your life. You see, the shadow is not evil. It is simply unknown. It contains everything you were told not to be. Everything you feared would make you unloved, unworthy, unsafe. Your anger, your tenderness, your desire for rest, your hunger for purpose, your need to be held, all of it shoved underground. Because somewhere along the way, you learned it was dangerous to be whole. So you split. You showed the world what it wanted and buried the rest in the vault of your unconscious. But here is the truth I have seen time and again. What you reject in yourself, you will attract in others. The shadow does not die in the dark. It thrives there, and it rules through projection. You say she's too emotional, but it's your own feelings you're terrified to face. You say he's arrogant, but it's your own suppressed need to be seen that twists in your gut. You say the world is against you, but it's your own abandonment of self that echoes back. This is how the shadow moves the pieces without you knowing. This is how it governs your relationships, your work, your worth. Silently, efficiently, relentlessly. And the longer you avoid it, the more chaotic your life becomes. Because the shadow is not here to destroy you. It is here to be seen, to be met with courage, not control, to be heard, not hated. And when you finally turn toward it, not with judgment, but with presence, a transformation begins. You realize that the power you've been chasing in the world was buried in the parts of yourself you were taught to deny. You realize that the strength you long for is not in dominance, but in integration. To rule your inner kingdom, you must know every part of it. And that means walking into the forgotten rooms, lighting a torch, and saying to the voice you've avoided all your life, I see you. I am not afraid. You are part of me, and we rise together now. This is not romantic work. It is not easy, but it is the only path to true power. Because as long as the shadow goes unclaimed, you are not a king. You are a servant to what you refuse to face. Carl Jung wrote, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And so I ask you, what have you refused to feel? What part of you is waiting for your return? What truth have you buried beneath ambition and appearances? When you stop fighting the shadow and begin to understand its language, you no longer react to life. You respond from the center. That is how the king returns. Not with a crown, but with a mirror. Not with an army, but with awareness. The war is within, my friend, and victory is not domination. It is unification. Most men walk through life with invisible chains around their minds, not knowing that the key has always hung from their own neck. They chase success, approval, power, never realizing they were born crowned, with dignity, with presence, with the ability to lead not through force, but through clarity. But somewhere along the journey, the world convinced them otherwise. It starts early. You are told who to be, strong, silent, useful, and in being molded, you begin to forget your shape. You begin to perform, to overachieve, to please, to fight battles that are not yours, defend ideas that are not true, protect an identity that is not real. All the while, the real you, the king, is waiting behind the curtain, wondering when you'll come home. You don't need to earn the right to be whole. You were never broken. You only forgot. You only listened to voices that mistook noise for wisdom. They told you to man up, so you hardened. They told you to never cry, so you swallowed grief. They told you to lead, so you led others while losing yourself. But true leadership begins within. A man cannot lead others if he cannot sit with himself. A king cannot protect his kingdom if he is a stranger to his own soul. Your crown is not forged through titles or triumphs. It is claimed the moment you remember who you are beneath the mask. The persona, the social self, was only ever meant to be a tool, a bridge, but you made it a prison. You confused the applause with your worth, the image with your essence. And the more they admired the mask, the more you feared taking it off. But here is the paradox I discovered. What makes a man powerful is not his ability to wear the mask perfectly, but his courage to remove it, to let the world see the wrinkles, the wounds, the weariness. That is where strength lives, in authenticity, not armor. You were never meant to be invulnerable. You were meant to be whole. And wholeness includes the cracks. It includes the rage you were told to suppress, the dreams you were told to downsize, the softness you were told to shame. If you feel tired, lost, empty, it is not because you have failed. It is because you have forgotten. Forgotten the inner throne you left behind when you chose to survive instead of to live. But hear this now. You can return, right now, with breath, with stillness, with the decision to stop abandoning yourself. Close your eyes. Ask yourself, where did I leave my crown? It's not in their praise. It's not in your income. It's not in the mirror. It's in the moment you choose to stop pretending. The moment you say, I am enough as I am. That is when the crown returns to your head, not to make you better than others, but to remind you of the power that was never lost. The world does not need more warriors trying to conquer. It needs kings who remember how to listen, who know when to act and when to be still, who protect what is sacred, within and without. That begins with you, and it begins now. You feel powerless not because you lack strength, but because you've been trained to doubt your own authority. You've been taught to measure your worth by comparison, to seek external confirmation for internal truths. But the power you long for, the certainty you crave, it was never meant to come from them. It was meant to rise from within. From the moment you were told to behave, to compete, to toughen up, you were pulled further away from your own essence. Masculinity became a performance, not a presence. Strength became suppression, not sensitivity. You learned to measure yourself by what you could conquer, not by what you could understand. And so you began to lose touch with the very thing that makes a man powerful: his depth, his inner life, his grounded truth. You were not born powerless. You were born with fire. But when that fire was never mirrored back to you with love and guidance, it began to burn inward. You became afraid of your own intensity. You buried your emotions. You silenced your intuition. You sacrificed your authenticity to belong. This is the quiet crisis of modern man. The powerlessness is not real. It's inherited. It's a story passed from father to son, from culture to individual, from silence to shame. A story that says, your value is in what you produce, not who you are. Your strength is in what you endure, not in what you express. Your purpose is to serve the system, not to serve your soul. And the system has benefited from your forgetfulness. Because a man disconnected from himself is easy to manipulate. He will chase validation like a drug. He will exhaust himself to prove he is enough. He will abandon his inner world to be accepted in the outer one. And all the while, he will feel the gnawing emptiness inside and not know why. But I will tell you why. It is because you left your soul behind. You walked away from the sacred inner temple to chase a crown made of dust. And now you wonder why it all feels so hollow. Your power returns the moment you reclaim yourself, the moment you stop playing roles and start living truth, the moment you say, I will no longer betray myself to be liked. I will no longer sacrifice my values to be seen. Do not confuse peace with weakness. The man who knows who he is, who has faced his shadow, who has reconciled with his anima, who no longer wears the mask of persona as his identity, that man is unshakable. He is not afraid to be misunderstood. He is not desperate to be admired. He is willing to stand alone if truth demands it. This is the lost psychology of kings. Not domination, but self-possession. Not control, but clarity. Not aggression, but aligned purpose. And when a man walks this path, he does not need to raise his voice. His presence speaks for him. His silence holds weight. His boundaries are respected without being explained. This is what you have been seeking all along. Not power over others, but power within. And it begins by remembering what the world taught you to forget. Your soul is not a weakness. Your vulnerability is not a flaw. Your truth is not negotiable. Reclaim it. Now, there is a king inside you, not a tyrant, not a performer, a quiet sovereign, rooted, watching, present. He does not scream to be heard. He does not clamor to be seen. His power lies in his stillness, in his knowing, in his refusal to abandon what is sacred just to feel safe. When you feel lost, it is not because you are weak. It is because you've forgotten the throne within. You've allowed the noise of the world to drown out your own inner compass. You've mistaken applause for alignment, urgency for truth, performance for purpose. But a true king does not chase noise. He listens for signal. He does not move unless the move is intentional. He knows that not all battles are worth fighting. Not all victories are worth the cost. He guards his energy like a holy fire. He does not pour himself into cups that leak. I have seen what happens when a man lives disconnected from this sacred center. He grows tired, not from exertion, but from fragmentation. His mind runs, his body tightens, his relationships lose depth, his dreams lose color. And worst of all, he begins to believe that this numbness is normal. It is not. A king without center is a pawn in disguise. A man who has lost himself in the pursuit of proving something to people who do not even see him. He is not free. He is owned. Owned by fear, by expectation, by the illusion that power must be performed rather than inhabited. But the moment you pause, really pause, and ask yourself, what am I actually defending? The game begins to change. You begin to see the wasted energy, the unconscious betrayals, the misplaced loyalty to roles you never chose. True kingship begins when you stop seeking permission to be who you are. You do not need to be liked. You need to be true. You do not need more power. You need more presence. You do not need to climb the hierarchy. You need to descend into yourself. And this descent, this inner journey, is where all true authority is born. It is where you face your shadow, not with shame, but with reverence. It is where you meet your animus, your inner fire, and learn how to wield it without burning down your life. It is where you see your persona not as your identity, but as a tool, a mask to wear when needed, but never to sleep in. You were not made to beg for worth. You were made to embody it. You were not made to chase validation. You were made to carry vision. You were not made to perform power. You were made to radiate it. And that power begins with a simple question whispered in the silence of your own soul. What do I refuse to betray ever again? Answer it, and live from that answer. Because when a man protects what is sacred within him, the world feels it. Not because he demands respect, but because his very being commands it. And that is what it means to remember the king. It is not the world that exhausts you. It is not the weight of responsibility or the chaos of life. What drains you is the constant war within, the conflict between who you are and who you pretend to be, between the soul that longs for truth and the mask that performs for survival. This is the great deception of modern man, that power lies in control, in domination, in noise. But I tell you this, your real enemy is not out there. It is the inner voice you have not yet questioned, the shadow you have not yet made conscious, the wound you continue to protect by avoiding your own depth. You see, most men are not defeated by others. They are defeated by their own unacknowledged pain. You run from silence because in silence the truth speaks. And it says, you have betrayed yourself too many times. You've said yes when your gut screamed no. You've remained silent when your soul begged you to speak. You've stayed in rooms where your presence was merely tolerated, not revered, and each time a piece of you went quiet. Not because you are weak, but because no one taught you that the true battle of kingship is internal, that the battlefield is your own mind, your own body, your own story. I have seen this play out endlessly. A man believes he must achieve more to feel worthy, so he chases. He burns out. He performs. He wins applause, but loses himself, because he was never taught that performance without purpose is spiritual decay. And so he wakes up one day, successful, admired, maybe even envied, but empty, because nothing external can satisfy the inner exile. That exile, my friend, is the price of abandoning your truth. You may not even know when it began. Perhaps it was in childhood, when your needs were too much, your sensitivity mocked, your fire punished. So you hid, you adapted, you created a persona to survive. But the cost of that mask was your center. And now, all your fatigue, all your frustration, all your silent rage, it is not madness, it is memory. Your body remembering every time you betrayed yourself to belong. But I will tell you something sacred now. You can return. You can reclaim what was buried. You can stop leaking energy to false identities and build a foundation that doesn't shake when others doubt you. Begin by watching your inner dialogue. Whose voice is that when you say, I can't? Whose expectations do you carry like chains? Who benefits from you staying silent, small, agreeable? You must see clearly to lead yourself. You must name the shadow before you can integrate it. You must walk straight into the confusion, into the ache, and say, I am ready to see what I've been avoiding. This is not weakness. This is the warrior's path. To face your own distortions, your own lies, your own dependency on external approval, and cut them loose with the blade of clarity. Because only then can your energy return to you. Only then can you move with power, not to prove anything, but because you finally remember who you are. And that man, the one who is no longer available to the enemy within, he becomes untouchable. Not because he is perfect, but because he is whole. You've been trained to look outward for direction, to obey rules written by men who never knew your soul, to seek permission from systems that never intended for you to lead yourself. But true kingship begins the moment you reclaim your inner authority. The moment you say, no more will I bow to what silences my truth. When you stop outsourcing your value, everything changes. You no longer move for validation. You no longer chase the applause. You no longer shapeshift just to be tolerated. Your energy no longer leaks into proving, performing, pretending. This is not rebellion for the sake of ego. It is a return, a homecoming, a rerouting into what is real. And what is real is this: your worth is not negotiable. Your voice is not conditional. Your presence is not dependent on performance. To embody your authority, you must first recognize where you've given it away. Every time you swallowed your truth to keep the peace, you handed over your crown. Every time you stayed silent to avoid rejection, you traded your throne for approval. Every time you said yes when everything inside said no, you became a servant to fear. But you are not meant to serve fear. You are meant to serve truth. And that truth begins within. Let me ask you, when was the last time you made a decision not to impress, but to align? Not to succeed, but to stay soulfully intact. You see, real power does not come from force. It comes from congruence, from living in such alignment with your principles that the world cannot buy you, tempt you, or shake you. And this alignment is not something you find. It is something you remember. You were born with it. As a child, you knew who you were. You laughed without shame, spoke with clarity, loved without fear. You were whole. Then the world taught you to fragment, to hide your wildness, to shrink your tenderness, to package your power in politeness. And so, you forgot. But that child still lives within you, waiting for the king to return. Not to perform, but to protect. Not to conquer, but to restore what was sacred. And so the path forward is not to become someone new, it is to become someone true. From this place, everything shifts. You walk differently, speak differently, breathe differently, because you are no longer living from scarcity, but from center. You are no longer performing a version of yourself. You are embodying the truth of yourself. Others may not understand. They may resist the new you. They may call you arrogant, selfish, distant. Let them. That is the price of sovereignty, and it is a small price to pay for the freedom of no longer betraying yourself. This is what I mean when I speak of individuation. Not isolation, but integration. The unification of your fractured parts. The awakening of the inner king who no longer needs to dominate because he is already whole. And from that wholeness, you lead. Not over others, but over your own life. That is the real throne. That is the kingdom that cannot be taken. And that is the return you have been waiting for. The moment you reclaim yourself, the world around you begins to shift. But do not mistake this shift for peace. At first, it may feel like rupture. The systems that once fed on your compliance will no longer recognize you. People who once relied on your passivity will call you difficult. Those who once held power over your insecurity will now call you distant. But this is not rejection, it is reconfiguration. You see, your absence from old dynamics is not abandonment, it is correction. It is your energy finally withdrawing from what you never truly belonged to. And when your energy exits what no longer aligns, you begin to radiate something different, an aura that no longer pleads, no longer performs, no longer apologizes for existing as you are. This unsettles people. Not because you are wrong, but because your presence now becomes a mirror of their own fragmentation. Your clarity shows them their confusion. Your stillness confronts their noise. Your boundaries trigger their dependency. And this is the test. Will you shrink to be palatable again, or will you stay solid in your truth? Let me tell you, many will not be ready. Some will accuse you of changing. Others will try to lure you back into the old roles with guilt, with nostalgia, with sweet poison. You've become cold, they'll say. You used to be so easygoing. And what they really mean is, I miss the version of you that let me take more than I gave. But you are not here to be digestible. You are here to be whole. And wholeness is not always soft. Sometimes it is steel. Sometimes it is silence. Sometimes it is walking away without explaining yourself. That is the weight of the crown, not control, but consciousness. So when the world reacts, observe. Do not defend. You owe no one the performance of your former self. Let them adjust. Let them grieve the version of you that you buried with intention. The version that said yes out of fear. The version that smiled while dying inside. The version that was loyal to suffering. He is gone, and in his place stands the one who remembers, the one who knows what he is here to protect, the one who no longer moves just to be loved, but loves from a place of movement within. This transformation will attract too, but not more noise, not more demands. You will begin to draw in those who speak the language of presence, those who have also known the death of the false self, those who respect silence, honor space, and meet you not as savior or subject, but as a sovereign equal. And that is when you will know the inner kingdom you fought to protect has become a lighthouse for others who are still wandering in the dark. You will not need to lead them, you only need to embody. Because presence is the loudest sermon. And a man who has remembered who he is doesn't need to convince the world. His life does the speaking. And so stay solid, stay centered, stay sovereign. Not for others, not for approval, but because every time you do, you strengthen the collective memory of what it means to be whole in a world that has forgotten. Let me tell you something few are willing to say in this world of noise. Real power does not shout. It does not plead for attention. It does not perform. Real power is quiet because it is rooted. A king does not announce his every move. He does not need to be seen to know he is significant. The man who has become himself, fully and without compromise, no longer seeks confirmation from the outside. He does not ask, do they approve? He asks, am I aligned? The world you live in will try to convince you otherwise. It will tell you that to matter, you must be visible. That your value lies in the likes, the applause, the opinions of those who barely know themselves. But I tell you, this is a trap. A king who must constantly prove he is a king has already lost his throne, because his power is dependent, reactive, fragile. The path of inner kingship requires that you stop performing, that you stop dressing your wounds in gold, that you stop mistaking validation for belonging. It requires that you sit alone, not to be empty, but to remember, to feel your breath, to hear your soul, to taste your essence without the seasoning of the crowd. And what will you find there? Not a showman, not a puppet of other people's expectations, but a force, still, steady, a presence that cannot be shaken by gossip or praised into illusion, a king who knows that proving is a symptom of forgetting. You don't prove what you know, you live it, you breathe it, and your life becomes the evidence. I too had to learn this. I too once believed that only through intellect, through titles, through recognition would my work matter. But what matters most does not scream. It echoes in silence, it lingers in stillness. And so must you. Do not chase power, embody it. Do not seek status. Ground yourself in significance. The crown is not a decoration, it is a burden and a blessing. It demands that you choose solitude over popularity, integrity over performance, depth over visibility. The king doesn't win by being everywhere. He wins by being exactly where he needs to be, rooted, sovereign, and awake. One move from such a man can ripple through generations, because his power doesn't come from noise. It comes from knowing, from remembering, from living in alignment with something ancient and eternal. And when you carry yourself like this, something miraculous happens. You stop playing their game, and you start writing your own.